everyone, Sakuriasen here, and in today's composition lesson, I'm going to be covering negative space and positive space. So right now, I just have a blank piece of paper, and there's nothing negative or positive about it. But if I go ahead and I add like a black circle, now this black circle becomes the interest. If you just look at this page, most likely you're going to focus in on this black circle. And this becomes a positive space, and the area around it becomes negative space. So positive space is the thing, and negative space is the thing, the area around the thing. And in an image, it's really important to balance this. So here I have a portrait, I suppose, and it's balanced in a way that, you know, it's pretty classical. You've got a fairly good amount of negative space and positive space. It's almost a 50-50 ratio, where there's 50% negative, 50% positive, and I usually don't like to do that too much, but for an image like this it works. And the reason it works is that you have an interesting shape here. If this was, you know, just more plain and just split 50-50, it's usually not as interesting. Now if I change the ratio, so now we've made the figure much smaller, it does become quite a bit more interesting. There's a lot more negative space, which means that your eye focuses on this character, and it almost feels, to me anyway, like this character is thinking. We're wondering, why is this character so small on the page? So your arrangement of negative space and positive space can really affect the mood or the feeling in a piece. So let's look at this one, and this one's pretty much split 50-50. And we have white on the top and black on the bottom. Now, in this case, there's not really a description of what's positive and what's negative, but usually, if we just look at this as an abstract image, we tend to think of the black as the positive space. And that's because it's just how we see the world. If you imagine looking at outside and you see the sky, and it's much brighter than the ground. So we see this, and it's a somewhat okay feeling. You get a somewhat calm feeling. But now if I reverse this, and we have the black on the top and the white on the bottom, it completely changes it. It's almost an unsettling feeling, as if something's falling down or something's heavy or it's going to crush you. And that's because, again, we see the white and we assume it's the sky, and then we see the black and it becomes a positive shape, and it seems to be heavy, again, when you compare it to this one, which seems somewhat okay, somewhat peaceful and calm. So understanding the psychology behind it can also change the feeling you get across through using negative space and positive space. Now here I have a composition where there's not much positive space, but there's a lot of negative space. Yet, even though there's much more negative space, we really focus, just like with that black circle in the middle of the page, we really focus on the positive space. And this is one way of making something important. So in this image, the most important thing that pops out right away is this hot air balloon, and then the city. And the reason is because this area is surrounded by negative space. It really has a lot of contrast. This is important as well, but there's more of it. There's more black here, and it's also cramped near the edge. So it doesn't grab as much attention as this hot air balloon. And here's another image. Now the difference is between these two is that this one has a lot of white and this one has a lot of black. However, in both of these, there's a small amount of positive space. And in this case, the positive space would probably be this, I guess, satellite. And the negative space could be this whole planet. And the the background, or the planet could also be the positive space. So it's really dependent on what you're looking at. You can have, for instance, an eye on a face, and as long as you're looking at the face as a whole, that eye is part of the positive space. But let's say you zoom into that eye and you look at the white of the eye and then the pupil and the iris. Maybe the pupil and the iris are positive shapes against the white, which would then be a negative shape. So I think the most important thing to understand about negative shapes and negative space and positive space is how to balance them, how to create interesting compositions, how to use it to your advantage, how to understand, if you put a large amount of dark at the top of an image, it's going to give you a different feeling than if you have a large amount of dark on the bottom. If you have a smaller image on the page, it could be a lot more interesting than having a larger image. And it doesn't mean that it's not necessarily more interesting, but it's going to give you a different feel. So it is something important to consider. So in the next lesson, I'm going to be covering sedate, alert, and dynamic compositions and just how to achieve those. So I'll see you then, and thanks for watching.